clearly she's not remembering who they let out to get her back.
The Merchant of Death.
The Merchant of Death. An arms dealer that wanted to kill American citizens, according to the report.
The WNBA was supposed to be celebrating its biggest win in years, record ratings, a new expansion team, and packed arenas across the country. Instead, the league is now drowning in one of the most chaotic controversies it has ever seen. And it all started with one sentence. When ESPN's Stephen A. Smith casually mentioned a so-called DNA test tied to Brittney Griner's time in Russia, the reaction was instant. Clips of the segment spread like wildfire, TikTok lit up with speculation, and Twitter threads exploded with conspiracy theories that were supposed to have died years ago. This wasn't a random internet rumor. This was one of the loudest voices in sports media, live on national television, casually suggesting that something the world had already moved on from might actually be true. And just like that, Brittney Griner, one of the most recognizable athletes in women's basketball, was dragged back into the same cycle of gossip and body shaming that has haunted her entire career. But to understand why this moment has so much weight, you have to rewind a few years to 2022, when Brittney Griner went from being a basketball icon to an international headline.
In February of 2022, Brittney Griner was arrested at a Moscow airport for carrying vape cartridges containing cannabis oil. What started as a quiet detention quickly escalated into a global diplomatic nightmare. Russian authorities sentenced her to 9 years in prison, sparking outrage across the US and beyond. She became a political pawn in a tense standoff between nations. For months, every photo, every court appearance, and every statement about her case made global...
I mean, the trade took a little minute to happen, too, on the back end, on my end. Like, I had to get transferred from the penal colony to the men's prison in Moscow.
By December, after nearly a year behind bars, she was finally released in a high-profile prisoner exchange between the US and Russia. Her return home was supposed to be the end of the ordeal, a moment of relief and healing. But for many, it was just the beginning of a new chapter of scrutiny. Even before her arrest, Brittney Griner had always been polarizing. She wasn't just a dominant player, she was outspoken. Back in 2020, she famously refused to stand for the national anthem, citing racial injustice and police brutality. Her stance sparked backlash, and suddenly she wasn't just a basketball star, she was a cultural flashpoint. Combine her activism with her towering 6'9" frame, deep voice, and athletic dominance, and Griner became a magnet for online hate. Trolls targeted her appearance relentlessly, questioning her femininity, mocking her voice, and spreading baseless rumors. And during her time in Russian custody, that hate only intensified. One of the most viral rumors was a fake CNN-style screenshot claiming Russian authorities had ordered a DNA test to determine if she should be sent to a male or female prison. The story sounded sensational and it spread like wildfire. But major outlets, including Reuters, quickly confirmed the screenshot was fake. The rumor was debunked, yet it never truly went away. Fast forward to 2025, women's basketball is finally booming. Caitlin Clark's rookie season brought in millions of new viewers. The Golden State Valkyrie became the WNBA's first new franchise in over a decade, and Brittney herself was back on the court, determined to let her game speak louder than the noise. But then during a segment about truth in sports, Stephen A. Smith casually tossed Brittney's name into the conversation, and with it, that long-debunked DNA rumor. He didn't confirm anything, but he didn't deny it either. The way he dropped it into the discussion felt like bait, and social media ran with it. Suddenly, the same fake story from years ago was trending all over again. This wasn't some anonymous Twitter user with a conspiracy theory. This was ESPN's biggest personality, live on national television, reviving a rumor that had already done real damage. Within hours, clips of the moment were racking up millions of views. Fans and trolls alike were dissecting his words, debating whether Stephen A. was hinting at insider information or simply repeating gossip.
You would be smiling, you would be ecstatic, you would be happy, and something like this wouldn't faze you at all. The fact that it does is disturbing.
Trade took a little minute to happen, too, on the back end, on my end. Like, I had to get transferred from the penal colony to the men's prison in Moscow, and I got checked into there. I knew I was getting traded, but the way they were treating me and their one little last play to terrorize me or mess with me, because when they were checking me in, they had me stripped down butt naked in front of a room of like probably about 7-8 men, and they had the Polaroid and they got me spinning in a circle while they like taking photos, right, of my tattoos, because my tattoos are, you know, whatever they are.
Was it just the tattoos?
And as the speculation grew louder, one voice was noticeably absent: WNBA Commissioner Cathy Engelbert. Engelbert had spent years pushing the league into the mainstream. Under her leadership, ticket sales soared, sponsorships increased, and the WNBA was finally getting the respect it had been fighting for since its founding. But when it came to this controversy, she said nothing. No press release, no statement, not even a simple denial. And that silence only poured fuel on the fire. For fans, the lack of response felt like panic mode.
If this was a baseless rumor, why wasn't the league shutting it down immediately? For Brittney, it was a painful reminder that no matter how many times she addressed the speculation, the internet would always find a way to drag it back into the spotlight.
And this was just the beginning, because if Stephen A's words were enough to spark chaos, what happened next would turn the situation into a full-blown PR disaster. When Stephen A. Smith speaks, people listen. He's not just another analyst, he's arguably the loudest voice in sports. Millions tune in every day to hear his takes, and networks know that his words can make or break a headline. That's why this controversy hit so hard. Stephen wasn't just gossiping, he was legitimizing a narrative that had already been weaponized against Brittney Griner for years.
The comment came during a segment about truth in sports, a conversation meant to tackle accountability and transparency. Out of nowhere, Stephen A. dropped Brittney's name and tied it to an alleged DNA test from her time in Russia. The delivery was casual, almost offhand, but it didn't feel accidental. He didn't clarify where the information came from. He didn't even deny it was a rumor. He just left it there like a bomb waiting to go off.
And it went off immediately. Not long after, internet sleuths traced the rumor's revival back to a satirical Instagram post that had been circulating for months. It was designed to look like a legitimate sports headline, but it wasn't real. The quote attributed to Russian officials about a DNA test was pure fiction. Somehow, that joke post slipped into mainstream conversation, and Stephen A's repetition of it on national television gave it new life. That's the danger of a platform that big. Even if something is fake, the second it's repeated by someone like Stephen A., it stops being just a rumor. It becomes a debate. Was he joking? Was he hinting at something the league wasn't telling us? Suddenly, a piece of satire turned into a scandal. Fans who didn't know the backstory assumed there was something shady going on. Clips of his comment dominated TikTok, with people dissecting every word like it was a secret confession. Reddit threads reignited. Twitter went full conspiracy mode, reviving every piece of old footage of Brittney that trolls had been clinging to for years. It wasn't long before Brittney's name was everywhere again, and not for her performance on the court. A random courtside clip of her speaking during a WNBA game went viral on TikTok. She wasn't saying anything controversial, but the video amplified her naturally deep voice, and trolls latched onto it as proof of their conspiracy theory. Then came the recycled pool video.
Clearly, she's not remembering who they let out to get her back.
The
or
Merchant
American
of
Soul.
Death.
The Merchant of Death. An arms dealer that wanted to kill American citizens, according to the reports.
The same shirtless clip that's been circulating online for years suddenly resurfaced, rebranded as evidence. It didn't matter that Brittney has openly discussed her body image struggles for years, or that the clip was old and completely irrelevant. Social media thrives on sensationalism, and Brittney's body became the centerpiece of a smear campaign all over again.
What should have been a moment of celebration for the WNBA, its biggest ratings surge in history, was hijacked by cruel jokes, viral memes, and baseless accusations.
While the internet was tearing Brittney apart, one person's silence stood out: WNBA Commissioner Cathy Engelbert. Engelbert had been the face of the league's growth. She was everywhere in recent months, announcing the Golden State Valkyrie as the league's first new franchise since 2008, celebrating record ticket sales and pitching the WNBA as a rising global brand. But when it came to this controversy, she had nothing to say. Not a press release, not even a tweet. For some fans, her silence felt strategic, a way to avoid giving the rumor oxygen. For others, it looked like a lack of support. And for Brittney, who spent years fighting off lies about her appearance, the silence probably felt like betrayal. Because this wasn't just about a bad joke or a satirical post. This was about how quickly misinformation spreads and how hard it is to undo. Stephen A's one comment turned a long-debunked conspiracy into a national conversation, and the league's lack of response only fueled the fire. As the controversy grew, ESPN found itself in the crosshairs. Fans and journalists began calling out the network for allowing Stephen A's comments to air without any fact-checking or clarification. Social media accused ESPN of throwing Brittney under the bus for views, and while the network stayed mostly quiet, the damage was already done. Stephen A's brand has always been built on being bold and controversial. But this time, that boldness put a target on someone who's already been through one of the most traumatic experiences an athlete can face. And as the backlash grew louder, something else was happening behind the scenes, a shift in how sponsors and media partners were viewing the league. Because while social media loves a scandal, brands don't. What was supposed to be a season of celebration was quickly turning into a PR nightmare. The WNBA had been fighting for legitimacy for decades, finally breaking through the noise with stars like Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, and Aja Wilson. Now, instead of headlines about sold-out arenas, all anyone wanted to talk about was a fake rumor about Brittney Griner. And this wasn't just damaging Brittney's reputation, it was threatening the entire league's image. But this controversy wasn't only about misinformation, it was about something deeper, something that's been a problem for Brittney since the moment she first picked up a basketball. And to understand why this story hurts so much, you have to look at how Brittney's journey has always been tied to public scrutiny, body shaming, and relentless speculation.
For Brittney Griner, this moment feels like deja vu. She's been here before. Her body scrutinized, her voice mocked, her very identity turned into clickbait. And yet what makes this moment sting even more is that she's no longer just a player fighting for respect. She's become a symbol of an entire league's rise in its vulnerabilities.
The WNBA was finally thriving. After years of struggling for mainstream attention, the league saw a 70% surge in ratings in 2024. For the first time in over a decade, it expanded, adding the Golden State Valkyrie, a franchise that sold out its debut game months in advance. Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese brought millions of new eyes to the league. Aja Wilson was chasing a third MVP trophy, and stars like Sabrina Ionescu were turning All-Star Weekend into must-watch television.
That's who they let out. For her. You would think that you would be smiling, you would be ecstatic, you would be happy, and something like this wouldn't faze you at all. The fact that it does is disturbing.
It was supposed to be a new era. Sponsors were lining up, networks were giving women's basketball primetime slots, and Engelbert was pitching the WNBA as one of the most exciting products in sports. But this controversy flipped the script. Suddenly, the headlines weren't about record-breaking attendance or rising stars. They were about Brittney Griner's body and a rumor Stephen A. Smith handed to the internet on a silver platter. The most frustrating part of this saga is that the rumor wasn't new. It had been debunked years ago, yet it came roaring back because of one influential voice. And that's the nature of online misinformation. A lie can spread across the globe in minutes, while the truth is forced to play catch-up if it ever catches up at all. Research shows that sensational content, especially conspiracy, spreads faster and wider than corrections. And Brittney Griner, a black, openly gay athlete standing at 6'9", has always been a target for sensationalism. Her memoir, Coming Home, laid bare just how damaging this has been for her mental health. She wrote about being mocked in classrooms, ridiculed in gyms, and bullied in locker rooms. She spoke about hating her own voice as a child, wishing she could sound normal just to stop the whispers and jokes. This isn't just sports drama, it's a reflection of how athletes, particularly women, are often dehumanized. Brittney's identity has been dissected by strangers since she was a teenager, and now after surviving a near year-long imprisonment in a foreign country, she's once again being reduced to memes and speculation. For the WNBA, this is more than just one player's controversy. This is a test of legitimacy. When your league is finally on the rise, every headline matters. Every controversy can shift momentum. And when one of your biggest stars is at the center of a viral storm, silence starts to feel like complicity. Sponsors are watching closely, brands are careful about what they align themselves with, and a controversy like this, especially one laced with sexism, racism, and transphobia, can scare away partnerships. The WNBA has spent years building credibility, but credibility is fragile. If this narrative isn't handled, it risks overshadowing years of progress. Engelbert's silence might be strategic, but in the eyes of fans, it's a void. And in the world of social media, a void gets filled with speculation. What's easy to forget in all this noise is that Brittney Griner is a human being. She's not just a highlight reel, not just a headline, and certainly not a punchline. This is a woman who survived one of the most high-profile detentions in modern history, who came home and used her platform to advocate for other Americans wrongfully detained overseas. She's also one of the greatest basketball players of her generation, a two-time Olympic gold medalist, a WNBA champion, a player who redefined what a center could do. And yet, instead of being celebrated for her talent and resilience, she's once again trending because of a fake story that refuses to die. It's a harsh reminder of how quickly athletes, especially women, can be reduced to narratives they never chose. Brittney herself has said in interviews that she feels like a lab rat sometimes, always being poked, prodded, and analyzed by people who don't even know her. And now that same dehumanization is playing out on the biggest stage of her career. Where does the WNBA go from here? The WNBA has two options. It can ignore the noise and hope it fades, or it can take control of the narrative. Fans are divided on what's best. Some argue that addressing the rumor only legitimizes it. Others believe silence is a sign of weakness, especially when your league is fighting for respect on a national level. But no matter what happens next, this moment has already become a defining one, not just for Brittney, but for the league as a whole. Because if a fake rumor can overshadow your biggest season, your brightest stars, and your most historic growth, it's proof that the fight for legitimacy isn't over. The Brittney Griner controversy isn't just about a viral comment or a satirical post gone wrong. It's about power, perception, and the way misinformation can derail progress. It's about how social media thrives on outrage and spectacle, often at the expense of the people at the center of it. And it's about a league that's finally winning, yet still struggling to control its own narrative. So here's the real question. Should the WNBA speak out and defend its players, or should it let the storm pass and risk being defined by silence? Because if this season was supposed to be remembered for packed arenas, record-breaking viewership, and a new generation of stars, it's dangerously close to being remembered for something else entirely.